Hi guys, welcome back to Crazy4Crew. So today we have Steve Weiss. He's coming to us. He brings all his knowledge of being a sound mixer. And if you're interested in that position or being a boom operator or anything having to do with sound, this guy is the guy you want to see. So welcome to the show, Steve Weiss.
Hi,
Welcome to the show.
thank you for having me.
So listen, there's something we ask every guest, and the first thing we ask is, where are you from?
Born in New York, raised in Virginia, and been living in California for 42 years.
How long have you been in, and what did you do before you got into the film industry?
I was in the music business as a keyboard player, singer. The transition was not planned. It just, as so many things in life, it just happened. I came to a juncture and somebody offered me this job, being a sound mixer, and I took the opportunity. Not knowing it was an opportunity, it just seemed like a fun thing to do.
So in your job, what do you do? What is your job on set? When you go on set, how do you?
My job is to capture the performances of the actors. And that includes either having a boom operator to hold a microphone over their heads or to put wireless mics on their bodies and record their performance.
So when you're on set, for every, like, if you have a cast of like 100, when they have masses of people, do you have to mic all those people too? Like if they're in the background and they're going to be cheering and all that, does all that have to be mic'd?
Those people do not get microphones on their bodies, but we would record the ambience and their crowd sounds with the boom mic or a room mic.
And what is your title on set?
Production sound mixer is my title.
And do you do a lot of work in post with sound too?
No longer. I used to have a post facility, did editing and sound effects and music production and recording and mixing the whole project.
And when you say mixing, for people who doesn't know what that means, what does mixing mean?
When the editors get finished with the picture, they send it over to the post-production sound department. Post-production sound department will then add sound effects, will add what they call Foley, which is physically reproducing sounds like maybe a fight or rolling around or walking. Those sounds will be put in later. That mixed with the hard sound effects like gunshots, thunderclaps. We will add an ambiance at that point also. For example, you might be in a New York apartment and not be able to see what's going on down on the street or in the next apartment, but one adds those sounds of the street sounds or sounds going on in the next apartment, like maybe a radio or people fighting, arguing. Those sounds are put in as ambience, as a bed. Then the music, which has been scored or dropped in, you choose the points in and out from where they go. The sound of the music goes in and out. And then the mix is the level, balancing the levels of all these things for the mix, the final. And that involves having the dialogue loud enough that it transcends the other sounds, the music and the sound effects and the Foley. So the dialogue is the most important thing. People need to understand the words. Under the FCC rules and the Audio Engineering Society and worldwide, SMPTE, the Society of International, they all have preset levels where you can't go above a certain thing. So now they've addressed that. We used to see that the commercials were so much louder than the TV programs. Now there's levels that, according to the Federal Communications Commission, that they cannot exceed. So it's a much more balanced sound now on your television broadcast, and as far as your movies, that you can blast them as loud as you want. But there are limits to what you can do. You don't want it to be so loud that if it sounds okay, say in New York, it doesn't sound good at a theater in Iowa, or it doesn't sound good at a theater in France or India, anywhere where the movie might play, or the television show. So these are worldwide standards now. The world has shrunken regarding production. Find somebody, or if they have an acquaintance or a friend that already works in the situation, they should ask and try to be a visitor to that set and see if that's the type of job they're interested in. Maybe through an acquaintance, they could shadow the sound mixer, means sit next to him and watch what he does and how he directs his department, the boom operator, the utility. The sound also works with the video assist and the DITs, so we can all work together for the good of the project.
So, but suppose when you move to California and you don't know anybody, is there any are there any programs or any kind of avenues that somebody could reach out to like maybe call your union? What union are you got sound with?
Sounds in IATSE, and the sound local here in California is Local 695, and they take care of all the related sound chores.
And how do you get in? How do you get in your union?
One gets in the union by either having 100 non-union days working outside of the union, or 30 days of union work. Or the third method would be if you're working on a show that's not union and the crew decides and the producers decide that it becomes a union show.
So when somebody so if somebody works non-union, then they can work so many days, and if something turns union, then they're automatically in the union.
Yes.
Does your union have any programs or anything set up where somebody can do internships and find out about anything?
695, Local 695, the Sound Union, has instituted a program of training where people can get paid to train. And the training program is quite good at bringing people in and making them eligible, not making them, getting them eligible to where they would feel comfortable on a set and being hired.
So Steve, when you're on set, the equipment that you have is quite extensive. So if somebody were just getting into this, how would they get all that? Because you guys pay quite a bit for you all's equipment. How would somebody like first get started who doesn't have money to buy that equipment? What are the steps that they have to do to get to your position?
The equipment in the past, traditionally, many years ago, it used to be that the studio owned the equipment, and we were just a hire to operate that equipment. But it's become so much more involved now that the studios don't want to own all that equipment. And that's fine because we now purchase the equipment, we rent it back to the production. And the studio doesn't have to maintain it, they don't have to purchase it, and they don't have to sell it off. Things, as we all know, in electronics, things develop and evolve so much more rapidly than they used to because, example, a 5-year-old laptop is ancient in today's electronic lifespan, but and we always have to have the brand new thing, the newest cameras for the camera department, the newest sound for equipment for the production, and it's just constantly evolving. And how does one acquire that? You can't buy it all at once. It's pricey. What I have is insured for over $200,000, and it gets rented back to the production on a weekly basis. And it's a slow build process. We cobble it together. You might initially buy a recorder, and then you'll buy a microphone and a boom pole, and you buy things piecemeal as you can afford them and rent what you need from many of the houses in town. There are rental houses. You can rent microphones and wireless mics and boom poles and Comtext, which are listening devices for the director and the script supervisor and anybody that needs to hear what the actors are saying in order to do their job. All these things are mostly acquired piecemeal as one can afford them.
So for somebody that's getting started, you said like they have houses that you can rent. Is that a good place to get started? Like working in a house, a rental house?
No,
No, it's not.
it would not be the best place to get started because you're not doing the work you want to do there.
Yeah.
You're not being a sound mixer or a boom operator or a utility if you're working in a rental house.
Yeah.
The learn while you burn on the set seems to be the best way to go. You could see it in the classroom and get all the theory in the world, but until you get out there on that set, you are really not being educated. You're just being slightly prepared in if one would work in a rental house.
Now you said a utility and a boom operator. Did you start? Do people start out as a boom operator and then, or a utility and then go to what you do, or do they just try to aim for what you do like right off the bat?
Most would rise up through the ranks on television and films through being a utility, which is many tasks, wrapping the cables, putting microphones underneath the actor's clothing or on the outside of the actor's clothing, running the bell and light system, dealing with many of the tasks. That's why it's utility. The utility has a lot of tasks. The boom operator is a little higher rate. It's a little higher on the food chain. The boom operator holds the microphone on a pole above the actors' heads. And then should one decide that they want to be the mixer, they then sit in the mixing chair with a mixing console, a mixer, and the recording devices and controls that, and is the head of that department on the set, and will then organize and instruct the boom operator and the utility. Sometimes the utility has to be an additional boom operator. We'll have two of them or more. In a four-man department, which many shows use, you'll have two boom operators and a utility, and they push all the things around, and it's a good thing.
When you're hired on a set, do you hire your own utility and boom operator?
I do. I will have relationships with people I've worked with over the years, and I will call them according to the project what the needs are, and it's good to have good people around you that you can trust that really don't need a whole lot of instruction.
And sometimes if you're working on large projects, do you have more than one utility and boom operator working with you?
At times, yes.
Yeah.
It is more frequent one will see a four-man sound department rather than a traditional three.
Mm-hmm. And then the program that you mentioned that trains you with your union, do they help them find jobs too?
To the best of their abilities. The local 695 and the IATSE is not a hiring hall like a longshoreman or Teamsters would be. They don't control your hiring. They don't control the job's placement. They will support you in that any way they can. There's resources you can deal with. There's a production report that comes out with potential job leads, but it's still a matter of who you know, as in most industries, who you know.
Yeah. So, like I know a lot of times when I've been on set and sound guys will rent equipment. Like people in your position will have equipment that they can rent to other sound guys. Is that pretty common?
That is, it's often one would lend something to a brother in another sound person, but there are ways and favors that one would do for each other to get so everybody wins.
Yeah. And how long have you been in the industry?
I've been a production sound mixer since 1991.
Wow, a long time. Is when you were transitioning from music, what in music helped you do what you do now?
In music, I was constantly in the studio recording. So therefore, being in the control room and also being in the recording area, I was able to see what the engineers were doing and keeping my mouth shut and my ears and eyes wide open, I was able to pick up and occasionally ask questions how the equipment worked, and and then put hands on at times where nobody would be in the studio, or I'd be there early, or it would be late at night, and the owner of the studio or the management of the studio might allow me to record my own music in there. And but it's a different world now. The world is not that world is not controlled by big giant expensive recording facilities. It's mostly a cottage business now where people have their home facilities and do their recording, and they're of various sophistication, being from it's different. You don't need a giant 128 input console anymore to do that. You can do it in Pro Tools, which is a program for editing and recording audio.
And what do you think are some of the qualities or some of the things that people need to possess to be a sound guy? Like to be not just a sound guy, but a good one. What do you think that they need to be prepared to do and have the skills they need to have?
Well, equipment-wise, the package would include the mixing console, where all the microphones go into the console and come out either as ISO tracks. Every mic gets its own individual track for editorial later, and they can pick and choose how they want to use them. And a sound mixer, just the name implies, would mix together all of those microphone inputs and put out a mix which would go for dailies, or it would go for anybody that might be listening. Now the sets have they're all connected to the internet, where producers and writers and anybody that's not on the set at all can watch and listen to what's going on the set. So one would do a mix for that, a mix for editorial to deal with. If the mix is good, the editors can use it all the way through, and it's fabulous. But if an actor ad-libs something, and it wasn't in the script and the sound mixer missed that cue, it's there on the ISO tracks for the editorial to get. Or if the actors speak on top of each other and they're all individually wired, the editor can go back and get the clean track without that would not be mixed together with the overlaps.
So when you say a clean track and an overlap, for people that don't know, how do you get a clean track once you've already filmed?
You don't.
You don't.
Once it's been said, if everything is just done on the boom and two people are speaking over each other, you can't separate them. To varying degree, when actors have their own individual wires on, editorial can use that isolated track called an ISO, and because it's so close, the microphone being right here is only about 3 to 4 inches away from the mouth, where a boom op would have the microphone much higher. The proximity effect of having the mic here, or in a tie, or on the shirt, under the shirt, would be so much more present for the lav mic, the body mic, than it would be for someone that's farther away, and that would perhaps fix it for the editor. If not, there's what they call ADR, or looping is another term for that, where you go in and replace what the actors have said. The actor comes back and lip syncs to what was already said, and that's how you get your clean track at that point.
So you wouldn't, like, while you're on set, you wouldn't tell the director, like, they need to do that over again because it's overlapped, or, would you do any of that while it's going on, or you?
I will communicate with the director should there be an overlap. The director should know what he might be really wanting this fabulous dramatic performance, and where it would not be good for the actor to come back and loop it. He or she would not be able to get the same emotion that it would be in the moment of the scene. So it's always best to record and capture the performance rather than recreate it later.
So have you worked on a lot of television shows and film, or has television been more your medium?
In the past 10 years or so, 15 years, television has been the mainstay. I think I've only done 2 feature films in that amount of time. And television has been my bread and butter.
Your bread and butter. Well, I think it's great that you came, and I think it'll help a lot of people at least have a lead of where they can go. Like I didn't know that your union offered programs where people can go in and actually do internships and get paid. That's a good reference, you know. Any other details you think someone getting into the industry should know?
Anyone getting into the industry should know that it's not all sunglasses and red carpets. It's hard work. The hours are long. Your standard 12-hour day can be 14 or 18 hours, and your weeks are 70 hours long, can be, or longer. And you're going to miss the birthday parties, you're going to miss the dinners and the concerts, and you're going to get a very nice paycheck in return for that. But you're giving up your life in exchange and what is important in life for that paycheck. If you're in the union, you're going to have a Cadillac insurance plan, you're going to have a pension, you're going to have a 401k, all these things, and the living conditions, your working conditions are spelled out in the contract. So both sides, management and labor, know what the rules are, and everybody is bound to follow them.
That's great. It's good to know. Well, I think that covers everything. I think that was a helpful interview, Steve. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.